Imagine waking up from this um, incredibly complex, life-saving surgery, like a full-on heart transplant.
Oh man, the relief you'd feel.
Right. You open your eyes, you feel that strong, steady thud in your chest, and you are just overwhelmed with gratitude.
You've literally been given a second chance at life.
Exactly. But then, say, a week later, you walk into your bathroom, you look in the mirror, and you realize something terrifying.
Yeah,
The reflection looking back at you is smiling, but it's a smile you don't even recognize.
because it's a smile that belongs to a serial killer.
It's chilling.
It completely upends our fundamental understanding of what a medical miracle is supposed to be.
It really does.
Today, we are dissecting the excerpts from a truly gripping narrative called The Heart Remembers. We're looking at this terrifying premise of, well, what actually happens when a transplanted organ brings along the darkest, most violent memories of its previous owner?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really grasp the horror here, we need to start with 34-year-old Ethan Cross. Ethan was dead on an operating table for exactly 4 minutes. And the text makes a point to really emphasize the reality of those 4 minutes.
There was no bright tunnel.
Right. There was no warm light, no peaceful choir. It was just absolute terrifying emptiness. And then he's dragged back to the waking world by the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor.
He'd been on a transplant waiting list for 2 grueling years.
2 years. Getting this donor heart is, it's a definition of a statistical miracle.
Any 34-year-old in that position would feel like they just won the lottery of human existence. And, the surgery itself is a mechanical success.
Yeah.
The plumbing works.
Yeah.
The body accepts the organ.
But the psychological reality is totally different. It's, think of it like buying a refurbished secondhand computer.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
You bring it home, you boot it up, and you assume the manufacturer wiped the hard drive completely clean. Like it's yours now. But a few weeks later, these dark, encrypted files from the previous owner start opening on your desktop. And they're opening all by themselves, without you even touching the mouse.
That analogy perfectly captures the insidious nature of what Ethan starts experiencing. Because exactly 3 weeks post-surgery, this glitch in his system begins.
He just stops sleeping, right?
He completely loses the ability to sleep through the night.
At first, the dreams are just these shattered fragments, like a rainy street, the sound of heavy breathing.
Looking down at hands stained dark red.
Yeah, and obviously Ethan tries to rationalize this.
Which is what anyone would do. You'd assume it's just the lingering trauma of this massive procedure.
Wait, let's pause there because I want to understand the actual medical baseline here for you listening.
Right.
Could this just be his brain misfiring from the drugs?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what exactly is ICU delirium? Could that actually explain what he's seeing?
ICU delirium is a very real, very terrifying condition. Think of it as a state of profound acute confusion. Your brain is dealing with an immense sensory overload. The constant beeping of machines, the artificial lighting, the pain, combined with a massive chemical disruption.
Right, because of all the meds.
Exactly. Following a transplant, patients are bombarded with heavy immunosuppressant medications, things like calcineurin inhibitors.
Just to keep the body from rejecting the new heart.
Yes, but they can cross the blood-brain barrier, and when they do, they can disrupt neurotransmitter activity, leading to extreme neurotoxicity, paranoia, and severe hallucinations.
So the doctor's telling him, hey, Ethan, this is just stress and medication, isn't them just being dismissive?
Not at all.
It's actually the most mathematically probable diagnosis.
Statistically, yes. But here is the mechanism where that medical explanation completely breaks down.
Yeah.
Delirium and stress nightmares are fundamentally chaotic. They're disjointed, emotionally driven, and blurry. They operate on dream logic.
Right.
But Ethan's dreams escalate into something entirely different. They become hyper-specific.
Which brings us to the first full, coherent dream. It happens on a Thursday. Oh, the kitchen dream.
Yes, Ethan isn't just watching a nightmare unfold. He is physically inside it. He's standing in a narrow, unfamiliar apartment kitchen, and he's holding a hammer.
The sensory details the story provides here are just staggering.
They really are. He smells burning garlic on the stoves. He hears the low hum of city traffic outside the window.
He feels the literal sensation of sweat pooling on his neck.
And crouching in the corner of this kitchen is a woman, crying softly. She looks up at him and whispers, "Please don't do this."
Oh, man.
But Ethan swings the hammer.
When he wakes up screaming from that, the hospital staff again tries to blame the trauma.
Of course.
But Ethan knows better because of the details. He remembers the exact geometric shape of the crying woman's earrings.
He remembers a highly specific, jagged scar near her jawline.
He even remembers a particular song playing faintly through the wall from a neighboring apartment.
And that's the thing. The human brain, when it's under chemical duress, doesn't invent hyper-specific, mundane background details like faint neighbor music or the smell of burning garlic. No, it creates monsters. It creates abstract fear.
Exactly. Ethan stops telling his doctors about the dreams because he comes to a horrifying realization. He isn't imagining these things.
He is remembering them.
Yes.
The narrative transitions here from a psychological thriller to a profound violation of bodily autonomy.
Because if these were just nightmares, maybe Ethan could seek psychiatric help, you know?
Right, maybe he could numb himself with medication.
But by the second month, the memories start bleeding out of his sleep and into his waking life.
He starts demonstrating behaviors he simply cannot explain.
Like taking weird, unfamiliar routes through the city just completely on autopilot.
He finds himself recognizing distinct neighborhoods he knows for a fact he has never visited.
And he's anticipating the names of strangers before they even introduce themselves.
We really need to talk about why that is so terrifying. There is a fringe scientific concept called the systemic memory hypothesis, or cellular memory.
Okay, what is that exactly?
The idea is that memory isn't just localized in the brain. The heart, for instance, has its own complex intrinsic nervous system.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it contains roughly 40,000 sensory neurons. Sometimes neurologists actually refer to it as the little brain of the heart.
Wow. So you're saying the heart acts almost like a localized cache of data? Like a secondary hard drive?
That's the theory some people use to explain why transplant recipients sometimes report altered tastes or habits.
Okay, that makes sense.
The heart is a sensory organ. It responds to and arguably records vast amounts of biochemical and hormonal data.
But in this story, the concept is pushed to its absolute horrifying extreme.
Right. Ethan's new heart isn't just pumping blood. It is pumping the previous owner's learned muscle memory and visual data directly into Ethan's nervous system.
And we see that physically manifest in the diner incident.
Oh, that part is so intense.
Ethan walks into a diner, stops dead in his tracks, and recognizes a waitress. But he doesn't know her from his own past.
No, he knows her from a dream.
In his nightmare, he saw this exact woman standing behind yellow police tape, crying her eyes out while officers carried a body out of an alley.
So he runs home, obsessively digs through old newspaper archives, and he actually finds her.
Which is just, the murder he dreamed about happened 11 years ago.
Every single detail from his nightmare. The alley, the victim, the crying woman is a flawless match to the archival reality.
And that confirmation pushes Ethan to finally investigate the man whose heart is currently beating in his chest.
He has to know.
His donor was a 38-year-old named Daniel Mercer. Officially, Mercer was killed in a random highway accident.
No criminal record, no surviving family.
On paper, he's the perfect anonymous donor.
But when Ethan digs deeper, the red flags are everywhere. Mercer was essentially a ghost in the system.
He bounced from city to city, constantly changing jobs.
Zero social media footprint. Almost no photographs. He lived a completely untraceable life right up until the car crash.
And while Ethan is trying to process who this ghost was, he experiences the basement dream.
Which is where the horror truly peaks.
It really is. He's standing in a damp concrete room. There's a single hanging light bulb, heavy chains bolted to the walls, and a drain in the floor surrounded by pooled blood.
It's just incredibly vivid.
And there is someone crying weakly in the dark. But the most crucial detail here is that Ethan isn't alone in the room.
Right? There is a second man present.
Hmm.
A tall, broad-shouldered figure standing in the shadows, just observing.
And this watcher speaks in a calm, flat voice. He says, "You always keep trophies."
And then Ethan looks down at his own hands and realizes his pockets are completely full of human teeth.
Ethan wakes up violently vomiting on his bedroom floor.
Understandably.
But the terror of the dream is eclipsed by what he finds when he turns on the light. He looks down at his hands, and there is wet dirt packed deep underneath his fingernails.
As if he had been physically digging in the earth while he was unconscious.
What's fascinating here is the escalation from mental intrusion to physical hijacking.
It is a profound psychological terror to realize your mind isn't your own, but to wake up with tangible physical evidence, wet dirt, proving that your body was being piloted by an alien consciousness while you slept.
It's unthinkable.
It shatters any remaining illusion of control. Ethan is becoming a passenger in his own body.
He starts hearing whispers during the day. He senses a second, heavier heartbeat rhythm underneath his own ribs.
And occasionally he catches his reflection in the mirror, smiling just a fraction of a second before he actually smiles.
But as terrifying as finding dirt under his nails is, it's technically an isolated event. That isolation completely shatters with dream number 17.
This is the exact moment the internal haunting collides with immediate present-day reality.
In dream 17, Ethan is in the woods. There's a teenage girl running barefoot through the brush, crying, lit by silver moonlight.
Ethan is chasing her, and he's holding a hunting knife.
He takes in the environment vividly. He sees a rotting, fallen ranger tower next to a creek and a very specific geometric symbol carved into the bark of an oak tree.
But the waking aftermath is different this time. He doesn't just remember the visuals. He possesses geographic knowledge.
He wakes up knowing exactly where this took place. Blackwater Forest, 2 counties north of his apartment.
Which shouldn't be possible.
So he gets in his car and drives 3 hours straight to that exact clearing.
Just fully driven by this compulsion.
The rotting ranger tower is exactly where he saw it. But the clearing is swarming with police.
Dozens of squad cars, crime scene tape, officers searching the brush.
Ethan manages to ask an officer what's going on, and the officer tells him a girl went missing last week, and they just found her body that morning.
Exactly where Ethan saw her fall in his dream.
The implications of that discovery fundamentally break the timeline of the narrative.
They do.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Daniel Mercer died in a car crash months ago.
Right.
If Ethan is only inheriting old memories from the physical tissue of a dead man, how is he getting real-time access to a murder that happened last week?
The heart shouldn't be receiving new data.
Exactly. This forces Ethan's hand. He is now holding impossible, guilty knowledge of an active crime scene. He has to go to the authorities.
Which brings us to the interrogation room and the ultimate unmasking of Daniel Mercer.
Ethan walks into a precinct and demands to speak with Detective Laura Bennett.
She happens to be the lead investigator on a sprawling web of loosely connected, unsolved murders that span 15 years.
Naturally, she thinks he's having a psychiatric break.
I mean, a guy off the street claiming his transplanted heart is giving him psychic visions.
Yeah, but then Ethan starts rattling off unpublished crime scene details.
He describes the exact angles of specific injuries.
He names burial locations that were never leaked to the press.
He repeats the final desperate phrases spoken by victims right before they died. Information only the actual killer could know.
Ethan looks at the seasoned detective, completely shaking, and says, "I think my donor remembers."
The revelation that follows flips the entire premise on its head. Detective Bennett turns pale.
She asks for the donor's name, and when Ethan says Daniel Mercer, she tells him that is factually impossible.
Because Mercer didn't die in a random highway accident.
He was a prolific serial killer.
He confessed to 7 murders and was officially linked by forensics to 23 victims.
23. And he died of sudden cardiac arrest while in police custody, right in the middle of a heated interrogation, before he could give up the locations of the remaining bodies.
But Detective Bennett pulls out a case file and slides a photograph of Daniel Mercer across the table.
And Ethan almost passes out.
Because the face in the photo is ordinary. It looks kind, even.
Ethan recognizes him, and he doesn't recognize him as the man holding the hammer or the man chasing the girl with the knife.
No.
Daniel Mercer was the second man from the basement dream. Mercer was the observer in the shadows.
That visual twist alters the entire scope of what Ethan has inherited. Think about the sheer volume of trauma stored in that organ.
It's unimaginable.
The detective uses the phrase officially linked to 23 victims, but Ethan has had 17 wildly different, highly detailed dreams.
The dreams have shown him an endless array of faces, locations, and horrors.
The true scope of Mercer's crimes isn't 23, it is vastly larger, and Ethan's physical body is now the only existing archive of that truth.
So the police finally have the key to their cold cases. The mystery of the donor is technically solved.
But Ethan is left utterly alone with a literal monster integrated into his cardiovascular system.
And this leads directly to the climax of the psychological horror, the final dream.
It's the most chilling sequence precisely because it lacks the violence of the previous 17.
But there is no running, there is no blood. There is only Daniel Mercer standing in absolute darkness, smiling calmly.
Mercer looks right at Ethan and says, "You've been paying attention."
Ethan tries to scream or move, but he is completely paralyzed.
Mercer steps closer, leans in, and whispers, "Most people think monsters look different, but we survive however we can."
And then Mercer reaches out and presses his hand directly against Ethan's chest, right over the transplanted heart.
It is a horrifying assertion of dominance. Mercer isn't a passive echo playing on a loop.
No, he is an active, aware consciousness. He knows he is dead. and he knows he has successfully transferred into a new host.
Ethan wakes up gasping for air. The paralysis breaks, but something is horribly wrong in his apartment.
The air smells like copper. It smells like fresh blood.
He hears slow, deliberate footsteps pacing through his dark kitchen.
He's panicking. He grabs a heavy lamp from the nightstand. He stumbles down the hallway, ready to fight for his life, and the kitchen is empty.
Scrawled across his wall in wet, red letters are 4 words. You missed 3.
The physical reality of that message is terrifying. The police forensics team sweeps the apartment. There is no forced entry.
The windows are locked from the inside. There are no foreign fingerprints anywhere.
And the red writing on the wall, it isn't blood, it is surgical marker ink.
The exact, highly specific type of ink used by surgeons to mark a body during organ transplant operations.
How does that even happen? If the police definitively prove no one broke in, the only logical conclusion is that Ethan got out of bed, walked into his own kitchen, found a surgical marker, and wrote a taunt to the police on his own wall while completely asleep.
The concept of dissociative fugue is one thing, but this is Mercer, literally taking the wheel of Ethan's motor functions to mock the authorities.
It suggests a complete, horrifying symbiosis between the host and the parasite.
And while the immediate haunting, the overt dreams, the footsteps, seems to stop after that night, the long-term aftermath leaves us with a lingering dread that completely defies medical science.
Right, we move into the epilogue of Ethan's life. The violent nightmares eventually fade away.
But Ethan himself is fundamentally altered.
It's not just psychological trauma. His literal biology seems hijacked. He develops cravings for foods he used to hate.
The slant and pressure of his handwriting completely change.
There are days where the very cadence and pitch of his voice belong to someone else.
And the world around him begins to sense that wrongness. Strangers on the street approach him, insisting they know him.
The most unsettling moment is when a woman marches up to him outside a grocery store, stares into his eyes, slaps him across the face, and screams, "You're supposed to be dead!"
Society subconsciously recognizes the predator wearing Ethan's skin.
Meanwhile, the authorities quietly use the geographic details Ethan provided to reopen Mercer's cold cases, and they strike gold.
They dig up bodies at every single site Ethan described.
Except for 3.
You missed 3. The message written on the wall wasn't just a taunt, it was a promise.
Those 3 missing bodies are never found.
But the authorities finding the graves isn't the most disturbing part of the conclusion.
No.
The true horror is what is discovered inside Ethan's chest 6 months later.
Ethan goes to the hospital for a routine 6-month post-op medical scan, just making sure the heart is still pumping correctly.
And the medical imaging reveals something that leaves the cardiologists speechless.
The transplanted heart has developed unusual scar tissue. But it isn't the random organic scarring you'd expect from a heavy surgery.
Through some impossible mechanism of mechanotransduction, the physical forces and cellular structure of the heart have formed distinct, recognizable patterns across the muscle tissue.
The scars literally spell out words repeated over and over again across the organ. Not finished.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it completely destroys our comforting notions about the finality of death.
It really does.
We like to view death as a definitive ending, a biological shutdown. We view the human body as a complex machine made of interchangeable, lifeless parts.
But this story forces us to consider that intent, malice, and identity can physically brand themselves into our cellular structure.
The heart isn't just a pump. It has become a physical manifestation of a killer's ongoing threat.
So what does this all mean? For you listening right now, The Heart Remembers isn't just a masterclass in suspense. It is a story that forces you to confront the boundaries of your own identity.
Where do you actually live?
Are you just the electrical impulses firing inside your skull? Or is your essence, your history, your habits, and your darkest impulses woven directly into the physical tissue of your organs?
It challenges the very definition of self. When medical science allows us to take a piece of someone else and sew it into our own chest, how much of their soul are we legally and biologically adopting?
Next time you're sitting alone in a quiet room and you feel your own pulse throbbing in your neck, or you hear your heartbeat echoing in your ears, take a second to consider what memories, what secrets might be locked inside that rhythm.
That's a terrifying thought.
We always assume an organ transplant is a pure medical miracle. We assume it gives a dying recipient a well-deserved second chance at life. But considering how Daniel Mercer's tastes, his handwriting, and his violent memories systematically took over Ethan Cross's body, What if the transplant actually gave the serial killer a second chance at life?
You think your hard drive is wiped clean, but those dark
We're
files.
just waiting to be opened.